I'm delighted to be here. We're delighted to have a university that really makes a significant difference in this state. I want to talk a little bit about our economy, business, and how it relates to the University of Massachusetts. We're an innovation economy in this state, as you all know. And what do you need in an innovation economy? You need to have a highly skilled workforce. You need a research institution that conducts research, that fuels innovation. And that's exactly what the University of Massachusetts does. Research, for example. We're a major research player in this state. What's a major research player? I would say an institution that does over $600 million worth of research. And there are 3 institutions in Massachusetts that do over $600 million. It's Harvard, it's MIT, and it's the University of Massachusetts. And our research has a focus on innovations and technologies that have a high likelihood of commercialization. Students. We educate 73,000 students at the University of Massachusetts, and we graduate 17,000 students a year. That's significant. And if you think about it, UMass students, 88% of which live in Massachusetts after they graduate. Now, it's about 66% after 5 years. But this is my point. Literally, the economy of Massachusetts runs through the University of Massachusetts. You could take Harvard, MIT, BC, BU, and Northeastern, and add up the number of people that graduate from those institutions that live in Massachusetts. All of them, we have 3 times more. Increasingly, private institutions, we have some great private institutions in this state, but increasingly those private institutions are educating people from outside of Massachusetts and from outside the United States. That's one of the reasons why I think the University of Massachusetts is so important. We literally are educating the workforce of this state. I remember before I got the job at UMass Lowell, I had been appointed but hadn't started yet. I went to see Bill Swanson over at Raytheon. And he said, you know what I like, Marty? I like to hire UMass Lowell engineers. And let me tell you why. And he proceeded to describe in detail the academic programming that we had at UMass for engineers, a program that involved service learning, a program that involved getting engineers to think about what engineers can do for the public good. And he talked for half an hour on that program. And it was clear to me that he was fully aware of the importance of the program. So UMass is very important to the economy of this state. It's very important to business and industry in this state. And I am committed to working with the business community to making sure that we're linked in as much as we can with what's happening in business. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurial learning, and I hope I'm not standing in between you guys at lunch. That would not be a good position. I'm assuming we're going to serve lunch here, right? So I don't have to worry about that. I'm a big believer in internships, co-ops, experiential learning, because that allows us to tie in what students are learning in the classroom to what's happening with companies and within the business community. Businesses have to spend a lot of money training employees, but if they get co-ops and internships, and those internships are good students, then they're able to hire them. They have the experience that we're looking for. So I think the connection between the University of Massachusetts and business and industry is extremely important. It's interesting, I mentioned the Donahue Institute. Donahue Institute did a study. They're the economic research group within the President's office, and we assessed the economic impact of UMass on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and found that the economic impact generated $6 billion in economic activity. It generated over 45,000 jobs annually. And if you think about it, the state invests about $550 million for a $6 billion return. That's a 12-to-1 return on state investment. So I think the University of Massachusetts is a pretty good investment of state funding. We are increasingly looking to get better however we can, to get more efficient wherever we can, and part of that is being entrepreneurial. When I was at Lowell, we bought a hotel for $15 million, renovated it, and we use it as an inn and conference center, but we housed 500 students there. About a $15 million operation. You know how much it costs to build housing for 500 students? About $58 million right now, up to $60 million. So we're always looking to be innovative whenever we can. Massachusetts is a state that doesn't necessarily invest in public higher education the way other states do. And part of that, I think, is because traditionally there was a feeling we had all these great private institutions. But my point on economic development is we can no longer afford to think of UMass as an institution that doesn't play the major role that we play in terms of the economy. So I think UMass is very, very important to the economy of this state. I mentioned our research. Our research is significant. We had 65 patents last year. We ranked 3rd in Massachusetts in patents. We trailed only Harvard and MIT, 40th in the United States, and 53rd in the world in patents. 34 million in licensing income. We were actually 2nd in Massachusetts, only behind MIT, which, by the way, means we beat Harvard in that area. But so we are a significant player in this state in terms of innovation, in terms of the economy. UMass was recently in a survey of the world's most innovative universities. We were ranked, this is by Thomson Reuters, ranked 37th in the United States and 57th in the world. So we're an institution that is on the move, and we're going to continue to be on the move and work as hard as we can. UMass Amherst is moving up in the U.S. News and World Report rankings. They are now ranked 29th among public universities in the country, and there are about 3,500 four-year institutions. And if you get a ranking of 29th among publics, and they're continuing to go up. So I'm excited about the role that UMass plays. I'm excited about the fact that at Lowell we've raised, we have increased the number of students by 50%, which is pretty significant in 8 years. The average SAT score in that period of time is up 100 points. So I think that people are starting to look at a college education the way they would look at buying a home or buying an expensive car. And because of that, more and more students are looking to the University of Massachusetts, which allows us to grow the revenue that we need to grow, to make the investments we need to make in new buildings and new programs. There was a mention of Raytheon in the program. We have a joint Raytheon Research Institute at Lowell, and it's a great partnership with Raytheon. Raytheon put $5 million into it. But what it allows is Raytheon researchers working with our faculty and our students collaboratively on research projects. It's going to result in more internships. It's going to result in more experiential learning opportunities for our students. So we're excited about that. We also partnered at Lowell with Raytheon for a new campus in Kuwait, where we're going to be able to have a presence in the Middle East, and Raytheon is basically helping by funding that initiative. So partnering with business and industry is really, really important. A couple of other, you saw this morning in the front page of the Globe, there was a story about the possibility of GE coming to Massachusetts. And it was interesting this summer, the governor asked me to go to a meeting. It was a private meeting. I guess I can talk about it now that it was in the newspaper, but I guess. Maybe I shouldn't. But one of the things that GE is interested in, they're interested in what is happening with higher education in Massachusetts before they make a decision like this. So they were interested in how we're educating people in STEM fields. And one of the things that I got across to them, one of the major issues that companies have, not enough students getting into STEM fields. And it's even a bigger problem with students of color getting into the STEM fields. And Genzyme was mentioned earlier. Genzyme has a joint partnership with the University of Massachusetts, Boston, to get more people of color into STEM fields. And Boston, by the way, is the only university its size that is a minority-majority campus. And they have a great program to get people of color into STEMs, and I believe it's going to be a national model for getting students into STEM. That's what companies are interested in, and that's exactly what the University of Massachusetts does. So these are very exciting times at the university. I'm excited about the direction that we're headed in. We are going to continue to grow our enrollment. We're going to continue to grow our research, but we want to get better and better and better at interacting with business and industry. So those are my opening remarks. I'd like to take some questions if any of you might have questions. Yes.
You speak about minorities, but how about the ratio of men and women?
Women in STEM is another major issue, and I always love the fact that in Lowell, my top STEM folks were all women, and that's important because we need to get more women into STEM fields. We work at each of our campuses. We have graduate schools of education, so we're working with our graduate school of education in the school systems throughout the state to get more women interested in STEM. We have scholarship programs as incentives for getting more women into the STEM fields. So, look, we need more Americans to enter the STEM field. One of the frustrating things is oftentimes we see parents discouraging their children from going into STEM fields, just discourage them, and that's exactly the opposite of what we need in order to be competitive in the United States. We need more people to make a commitment. We've redoubled our efforts working in K through 12. The other thing that's important, this doesn't start when somebody doesn't become an engineer in 4 years when they come to the doors of the University of Massachusetts. You develop an engineer over a lifetime. So students who come to our doors have to be prepared, and that involves an investment through K through 12. Students, when they get to the university, need to be ready for an engineering program. So it's a commitment that I think that we need to make. Another point I want to make is the fact that we have 5 campuses. I mentioned 73,000 students. We've got a world-class medical school. Our flagship campus is in Amherst, but we're also located at UMass Boston, UMass Lowell, and UMass Dartmouth. And Mayor Lawrence happens to be here, and he knows of the economic impact of having a community college right in the downtown, and then having the University of Massachusetts located within a short distance. The city of Lawrence and every urban area of this state needs to have an engine to drive the economy, and that's exactly what the University of Massachusetts does in really all over this state. And it's important to our future development. Yes?
I have a question about a broader national issue. There's been a lot of attention to First Amendment free speech on campuses lately, people taking offense to something that was said to have even things taught in class, history and so forth. I just wondered if you could give us your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, the way universities are set up, they're supposed to be open, free thought. You know, the idea of having tenured faculty members is so that those faculty members will be completely independent. And I think the system works well when there is independent thought and discussion. Universities are all about faculty and students, all the interaction that takes place between them. And I think we need to make sure that that interaction is meaningful and independent. On the other hand, I think that what you're seeing in many instances is society is responding to, in some cases, extreme points of view. I hope that, I know at our universities, one of the things that all of the chancellors are doing is having open dialogue on these issues. Every time you see something happening, when I see something happening on any campus in the United States, I pay attention to it, and we look to make sure that we don't have some of the problems that they have in some of the campuses. And the best way is open, honest dialogue. So I think interacting with students in an open, meaningful way is important. But I think freedom of speech is something that is important to a university. Yes?
I've always been impressed with the deal that UMass did with Meditech when they moved down to Fall River, providing a feeder system for training for skilled labor for them. It's a natural matchup with all the colleges and universities we have in this state. The trouble is, I think, that not only are universities and colleges not used to that relationship, businesses are not also used to that. And any thoughts on how we can sort of get those businesses to realize that there's a partnership there that can benefit them and benefit the Commonwealth?
That's a great question. And I was fortunate when I came to UMass Lowell because UMass Lowell had a history of interacting with business and industry. It goes back to the American Industrial Revolution. We're on the banks of the Merrimack River in Lowell and Lawrence. That's where the Industrial Revolution actually started. And the reason why the Lowell Textile School was formed was to get people educated in the textiles. And so there was a natural partnership, and then it went to rubber manufacturing. We've always had a focus on manufacturing. Even today, Lowell and Amherst both have nano manufacturing centers. So there's a commitment to research and a commitment to partnering with business and industry. But it's not a natural thing all of the time. You know, research that we conduct with companies, for example, I mentioned the licensing agreements and the revenue that we've generated. There's give and take back and forth between the faculty and the companies and the universities. I think that what we need is to have, particularly public research universities, need to have in their mission the fact that they need to interact with business and industry in meaningful ways. One of the reasons why I think community colleges are so important is because to the extent that they get out into the business community and study and understand the skills that people need and incorporate them into the curriculum, that's important. And I think it's important for our public research universities as well. You know, it's just interesting. There were when we did the deal with Raytheon, there were a lot of people that thought, your faculty's going to do research with Raytheon research. You know, it's actually a cutting-edge, innovative ideas. There was some criticism when we moved ahead in a campus in Kuwait as a partnership with Raytheon. But I think it makes our institution stronger. And business and industry, I think to the extent that more businesses and more companies get involved, and one of the things I'm doing, I'm meeting with CEOs from all over the state, trying to find ways to collaborate, to do partnerships, to think about scholarships and internship. But so it isn't always natural, but I think it's good for universities and it's good for the private sector, and I think it has to be a core mission of the University of Massachusetts, and that's one of the things I'm going to strive to do more and more of those things. And you know, you mentioned Southeastern Mass. I mean, UMass Dartmouth is critically important to the cities of Fall River and New Bedford, and we need more robust engagement with every area of the state, particularly gateway cities. Extremely important. But I think it should be. I think there should be more of a natural tie-in. It's one of the reasons why I appreciated the opportunity to speak to this group. I think understanding how the economy of this state works is really, really important. And I know the governor understands how the economy of this state, and that's why, you know, one of the things the governor has asked us to do is look at 3-year degrees, and we've developed 3-year degrees at UMass Dartmouth and UMass Lowell and UMass Amherst. He's asked us to look at finding a way to make a college degree more affordable, so we've developed partnerships with the community colleges where you can get a degree if you go 2 years at a community college or 2 years at one of our UMass campuses for between $30,000 and $34,000. Obviously it involves commuting, but for some students that might be an appropriate way to look at it. So we're doing a lot of innovative things, trying to look at best practices nationally, but collaborating with business and industry is only going to get more and more important. Yes?
I'm a proud Lowell graduate and son out at UMass Amherst. So, can you talk
Well, thank you for that.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenge of fees and tuition and your outlook for the next few years?
Well, fees and tuition are always a challenge, and I would put into that quality as well. In other words, it costs more money to be a research institution. You pay the faculty more, the laboratories and the facilities cost more. It costs money to be a research university. But I don't know anyone that thinks that UMass shouldn't be a research university. The research helps fuel innovation for this state. If you look at a UMass education over the last 30 years, let's say since I left UMass Lowell, I graduated in 1978, and I've looked at the cost of an education if you factor in inflation, and the cost of a UMass education over the last 30 years actually has stayed about the same or slightly gone down if you factor in inflation. What has shifted? What has shifted is who pays for it. Who pays for it has gone basically from the Commonwealth. Lowell, for example, 88% of the budget 30 years ago was paid for by the Commonwealth. Today it's 24% of the budget. So that's where the shift has been. Who pays for it? And we as a society need to have a dialogue about how much should students and their parents pay, how much should the state put in, And we need to make a judgment about that. And we need to have a dialogue about it. You know what's interesting? UMass has gotten a lot of publicity about tuition and fees. You know what the average tuition fee increase at UMass was the last 3 years? 1.67% over the 3 years, in part because we were able to freeze fees 2 years. I can't find a university, public or private, anywhere in this state that only increased tuition and fee by 1.6%. So it's a balancing act. I'm worried about it because when I attended UMass, I could actually work all summer and work part-time and pay for it. And today you can't, as a practical matter, particularly if you live on campus. And I urge students to live on campus. Why do I want students to live on campus? Because statistically, you're more likely to be successful academically if you live on campus and get the full experience. It's one of the reasons why we want to build housing in Boston. I mentioned it's the only minority-majority university that we have, and they don't have academic programming in housing. I mean, that's ridiculous. Students perform at a higher level when they live in learning communities where there are academic programs to ensure students are going to be successful. And here we are, the state's only minority-majority campus. So we're trying to build housing at Boston in order to deal with that. So we're going to work as hard, looking for efficiencies, buying, let's say when we buy services and products, we're looking at ways to do it as a campus. We're looking for ways to put in efficiencies wherever we can. And we're working with the state legislature and the governor to try to get, a reasonable amount of state funding. So it's going to be a balancing act. It's just going to be a balancing test. Now, it's an interesting system we have in Massachusetts. You know, the pay increases for university employees, all employees, are negotiated out of the A&F office of the governor's office. So it was a 3-year contract that gave our employees 3.5% cost of living increase. And we didn't decide it, but we have to pay it. So there are a lot of challenges like that. I'm interested in looking at national norms, but for public research universities, and looking to implement some of those things. And the idea that somebody else negotiates pay for your employees and then they don't pay for it, that doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. So a lot of factors, like imagine if you ran a company that way. And running a university is, you have to be entrepreneurial. I just mentioned with the percentage of the budget, if you look at UMass as a whole, only about 19% of the money comes from the Commonwealth. So we have to be entrepreneurial in everything that we do. So we're going to work hard at that. But I'll tell you something. I didn't come to UMass to see quality go down. You send your son to UMass Amherst, you want to make sure that when he graduates, he's able to compete with anybody who attended any private university anywhere in the country. And I believe that passionately. I'm a graduate of UMass, and I'm actually the first undergraduate to ever be president. I'm a graduate of UMass, and I have, during the course of my career, competed with people who went to Harvard and a lot of other places. And I want a world-class education for anyone that goes to the University of Massachusetts. So I'm not going to be advocating getting rid of research. I'm not going to be advocating cutting back on tenure-track faculty members, for example, because that's in essence what a university is all about. Universities are evaluated and get national rankings and stature based on the data that universities never have tenure-track faculty, for one. We need to continue to do things like grow our endowment. The endowment, I like to raise money. And it's left over from a prior job I had, I think. But, and I'll tell you what, it's a lot more fun raising money for endowments, for scholarships for students than it is to raise money for 30-second ads. But I think one of the things we have to do at the University of Massachusetts is keep working to increase our endowment. There's a tradition in academia, when you get a new position, they have an inauguration. They have this big ceremony where everyone puts on the robes. And I said to folks, I don't really want to have an inauguration because it seems kind of silly. And then somebody said, well, didn't you have an inauguration at Lowell and Ray's $1 million? I said, yeah. Well, why should we make it into a fundraiser then? We had my inauguration, and we raised $1.7 million. Money's still coming in from it. That's more money than any public university president in the state has ever raised at inauguration in the history of the state. So raising money for scholarships is really important, and we need to do more of it. What's interesting is at UMass, we reach about 90% of our financial aid, but we need to do better at it. And I think that that's something else that I hope that we're able to do even more successfully.
In very general terms, you talked about the community college network supplying and partnering with UMass. What are one or two things the community college system as a whole can do to be more effective supply chain partners to UMass? As you look at the research feed and the stuff.
Great question. Everyone hear the question? What can the community colleges do to be a better feeder to the four-year institutions, and how do we coordinate that? When I got the job at UMass Lowell, the first thing that I did was I called Carol Cowan, who was the president of Middlesex Community College. And by the way, I think every urban area in America should have a community college right in its downtown. I mean, it is so important that people who live in cities, many who are new immigrants to the United States, have an opportunity to go to a community college. One of the things that and she said to me, I said, what's our biggest problem? She said, well, sometimes, Marty, our students can get credit for courses that they took at Middlesex Community College easier at BC and BU than they can at UMass. So what do? First thing I got and that has to be approved by the faculty senate, and you know, when you work at a university, Bob knows this, but you don't really tell people what to do. You kind of lead them, right? So I went to the faculty senate and I said, why don't we collaborate and look to see why our physics program won't accept credits, say from Middlesex, for example. So we developed committees, and we're developing seamless transfer. We're getting everybody on the same page. We have a Pathfinder program that we're working on at UMass right now, to take every community college and every course they have, and every one of the UMass campuses, and look what the requirements are, so there's a seamless integration. So I think the most important thing is to make sure that students at community colleges are taking the right courses that they want to take and the major that they want to transfer into. Really, really important. Another thing that we need to improve at the community colleges is STEM. We need to make sure if somebody goes to a community college and they want to be an engineer, that they have an opportunity to do that. So that's something I'm interested in investing more time and more effort, so that students who go to community college can graduate in STEM fields, particularly engineering. Let me tell you another reason why community college is really important. I mentioned the selectivity at UMass Lowell. Well, UMass Amherst is a really tough place to get into. If increasingly the average SAT score is going up and up. I once had somebody, a legislator, call me because he said to me, what's going on up at UMass Lowell? Well, what do you mean? Well, I have a constituent that get into Suffolk, get into Merrimack, and get rejected at UMass Lowell. I said, well, yeah, look at what our SAT score is. So what we do, the reason why the partnership with community colleges is so important, if somebody doesn't get in to UMass, they ought to have an opportunity to go to community college and be able to rely on the fact they're going to take certain courses and transfer. Sometimes they transfer after a year, sometimes they transfer after they get their associate's degree. That is critically important as UMass gets more selective in terms of the quality of the students that are accepted. So I tell all of my chances, and I meet with community college presidents on a regular basis, and so that there's a dialogue. I recently had a meeting here at the UMass Club, and after I asked them if they'd consider joining the UMass Club, we sat down and just talked about transfer and how we can make transfer more seamless. So I think that's really important, but I'm a big believer in community colleges. It's open access. And basically, it's open access for everyone. And by the way, even with our higher SAT scores at UMass, a student that comes to us from a community college who's been successful academically, statistically has a higher likelihood of academic success when they get to UMass than the students we accept with the higher SAT scores. So students who are successful in community colleges are going to be successful when they come to UMass. Good question. Yes?
Are you developing online programs and programs for members of the armed services?
Yes. Well, it's interesting. Armed Services, UMass Lowell has more veterans than any university in Massachusetts, and we've made that a priority. Online education, UMass Online is a major business for the university. Just take Lowell alone. We do $40 million, we gross $40 million on online programs. 53% of the graduates at Lowell at our last commencement took at least one online course. So the short answer is yes. Yes, because it makes education more accessible, but getting back to what I said earlier, it's a good business model. I mean, when you ask, well, how did, we accomplished all kinds of things at UMass Lowell at a time when state budget was actually going down. Well, how do we find the revenue? Running online like a business is really, really important to us. So, and yes, we're doing more online with the military, but we're also doing more online in other countries and more online throughout the United States. So online is a very, very important part of our business plan at the University of Massachusetts. And I do mean business plans. Sometimes when I talk about business plans, sometimes faculty get a little nervous about that. But the reality is online, UMass online program has gotten national awards, and it's critically important. Marty?
Could you talk a little bit about the UMass Center in Springfield, which is a little bit of a different model, combining the different campuses in one center, and how the experience with that is playing out?
So the question is, how is it Springfield? UMass has a satellite campus in Springfield, and it's an opportunity for all of the all of the campuses, but I think primarily Amherst, to offer classes in Springfield. And I'm glad that the mayor of Lawrence left the room, because he's been asking me for a satellite in Lawrence. I mean, literally everyone wants a satellite, okay? And we want to be accessible, but you need a business plan. And remember, the majority of the money that we take in for our budget, it comes from students. So anytime there's an expenditure of anything, I say, is that in the interest of students? And there are a lot of great things that a university can do, but we can't take money from students to do them. So I would say we're off to a good start in Springfield, but we need a business model that's going to be sustainable. We can't open up satellites that don't pay for themselves, and we're not there yet in Springfield. And I can tell you, if something can't pay for itself, at some point you've got to ask the question as to, so what we're trying to do is make it sustainable. In this building, part of our agreement with the building is we have 4 classrooms that are available, as well as 2 other spaces. It could be classrooms, it could be breakout rooms. Why do we do that? We want to offer, we have a great business program at UMass Amherst, a great MBA program that people want to take in Boston. So we're also looking at the business model of that. We think that we can make a lot of revenue, but also be more accessible. I guess when I'm on a campus, I say it the opposite way. We want to be more accessible. And by the way, we can make money on it. And so that's an important part of our business model. So I'm delighted that we're in Springfield. It's great space, but we need to find a way to make it sustainable over the long haul. But that's a good question. It gets me to talk about, how does a university make a decision to do A, B, C, or D? You have to have a business plan. When we consider a new academic program, one of the things the Board of Trustees, or one of the things I as president want to see, I want to see what the business plan, what's the need for this program? How is it going to pay for itself? How are you going to fund this? All of that is critically important, which is why sometimes people think that UMass is a state-funded institution as if it's all funded by the state. And I've mentioned it's about 19% if you take all of the campuses. So we need a business plan in everything that we do. And I cut some things at Lowell that were pretty good things the university was doing, but I didn't think it was in the interest of students. And that's an important factor. If we get all our money from the state, then I guess we could do things that might be good things to do, but students provide the majority of the money, so it always has to be in the interest of students, which is why I'm so thrilled at UMass Amherst is involved in running this club, because that's a connection to the campus.
Yeah,
To the-
thank you. And thank you for answering our questions while your lunch might be getting ready.
That's okay. I know somebody here that will heat it up.
I figured you have that relationship. I'm interested in knowing about relationships that you might have with private universities in Massachusetts. And we know that the High Performance Computing Center in Holyoke was
yeah.
one example. But could you
Yes,
talk
as a
about that?
while higher education can be competitive, I think collaborating with private universities is important. And in fact, at UMass, we have the High Performance Computing, which is a collaboration with Harvard, MIT, and the other universities. I recently hosted the presidents of the Boston's research institutions right here at the UMass Club. I would tell you, the president of Harvard was here, the president of MIT, the president of Northeastern, the interim president the president of BU was here, the president of BC, and the interim at Brandeis. Thank you. And they were all here, and we were talking about ways that we could collaborate, joint research projects. And so we do that on a regular basis. I will tell you that that is one meeting I didn't ask them to join the UMass. I just felt that I couldn't do it. But so yes, we do. We have a joint partnership at UMass Lowell in nano manufacturing. It's a partnership with Northeastern University, UNH, and UMass Lowell. So we have a partnership with UMass Amherst and Harvard on a research defense grant. MIT is involved in that at all. So being smart about collaborating is really important, particularly for research. Attracting research dollars is becoming more and more competitive. So universities that want to be successful at getting research dollars need to be more innovative. It's one of the reasons why we set up a joint research venture with Raytheon, because we think the federal government's more likely to fund something that's funded where the research is private as well as our faculty. We think we're going to get more research dollars because of that. So collaborating with private institutions is really important, and really institutions around the country. I mentioned the business model for a satellite, and where I got that business model is I went out to Arizona State. I'm a big fan of Michael Crow, who's the president of Arizona State. He was at Columbia before there, but he's doing some really interesting, innovative things. And I'd like to see what best practices are around the country. And he was telling me how the various campuses that they have at Arizona State were established. And he said, Marty, you need to have a municipality, somebody needs to set up where they provide a building, and then you can do academic programming, and it can pay for itself that way. We have a satellite in Haverhill that would develop with UMass Lowell, but the Commonwealth is providing the money for the center, and then we provide the academic programming. So that's the model that generally works. But collaborating is really important for universities, and it's important to collaborate with universities around the world. We've established partnerships with universities in Ireland and Greece and in the Middle East. Those types of collaborations are important for our students, and it's important for our faculty. Great question. Yes?
You've somewhat alluded to this already, but it'd be great to hear your vision around UMass's role in this concept of community development, particularly because universities and institutions get asked to be all things to all people and how to prioritize.
That's a great question. So it's on community development. What is UMass's role in community development? And I would tell you, I think that universities in their own the communities where they're located need to be an economic development catalyst. Everything that we've done in Lowell, we do in coordination with the city, with City Hall. We expanded into a neighborhood. We established a task force to look at economic development, generating business in the neighborhood. You take the expertise of your faculty members that you may have, you get them embedded in the community doing research. I mentioned Lawrence. Lawrence is a great city for universities to think about research and thinking about what programs can work, what programs won't work. Harvard does research. I mean, everyone wants to do research in communities. So I think universities play that role. Universities, I mentioned students pay most of the money. So you need to make, I'm interested in academic programming that students are involved and engaged. So I think our students getting involved in communities, that's a direct connection to our mission. So we could put money into that kind of a thing. And I think we have 5 campuses spread around the state, and I think that every community we're in, and even the surrounding communities, they would all say that the economic spin-off, the community building, is something that they consider really important. It's one of the reasons why nearly every community mayor, when you were outside, I was asked a question about the Springfield satellite, and you were outside, and I said, I'm glad the mayor's been trying to get me, the MFF has been trying to get me to locate a satellite in Lawrence, and we're close friends too, so it's kind of tough on me to, but so you have to make sure the model works. But we have a responsibility to get involved in communities. Clark University in Worcester, they've done a pretty good, if you're interested in a model of a university getting engaged, Clark's done a really good job at Worcester in terms of helping develop the neighborhood around Clark and the neighborhoods in Worcester. So I think that's part of what universities are about, brain power, right? And we need, the Commonwealth needs the brain power that the universities produce to move the economy. But the brain power we have in our faculty, we have to get into the community and getting engaged and involved that way. And we do that, but I am never complacent about anything, to be honest with you. So we can always do better in everything that we do, and that's sort of my perspective on it. We can always do better in anything we do. And from my perspective, I want excellence at the University of Massachusetts in anything we do, And that means athletics. At Lowell, you know, we had a hockey team, and the hockey team, they weren't doing very well, and the Board of Trustees were considering getting rid of the hockey team. And I was interviewed for the job by President Jack Wilson. The first question he said, what are we going to do with the hockey team in Lowell? And I didn't know if he liked hockey, didn't like hockey. I said to him, well, and I looked at him, how am I going to answer this? I said, well, I'm a lawyer, you know, by